Sometimes life whispers that that's not enough drama in our lives. Do you recognize yourself? I do. Hi, my name is Irene and welcome to the Heart of the Press first ever episode of the Booktrovert's Corner. Here I am, and here's my dog's butt. He will be joining us in our small conversation, or not so small. We'll see. In today's episode, I want to discuss with you the importance of books and differences of genres, and how actually I am, as a huge fan of fantasy worlds, fell in love with detective stories. Not true crimes, detective stories. There's a difference. First things first, I need to tell you a short story as a beginning, how I grew up with fantasy books and why they mean a lot to me. When I was a kid, a toddler actually, my mother always read me fantasy books. Like, I fell asleep with my mother's voice reading me The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Isn't it incredible as a 3-year-old to learn the stories? And also the Chronicles of Narnia. These were books with which I grew up. Also here, a huge thing goes to my nan, actually, because we used to have a home library, a huge home library for that kind of apartment I used to grow up in my native city with my family, with my parents. And my nan loved to read books. She had a lot of books, like classics and nonfiction for that time, like 20 plus years ago, maybe 30 even. And for that type of apartment, which was not too big for our family of 4, it was huge. We used to have lots and lots of shelving units in our living room, and also a dedicated shelving unit for books in my and my mom's bedroom, and also a wardrobe filled with books, not with grand clothes, in her bedroom. So books were surrounding me my whole life. I loved libraries in schools. I loved public libraries when I grew up. Yeah, books were always with me. But why fantasy? Why fantasy affected my life so much? I remember the time when I was a kid, like a toddler. I was 3 years old, and I remember how I fell asleep with my mom's voice, reading me The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Chronicles of Narnia. These books, were the best, were my favorite, especially The Lord of the Rings, which I love for now also. I love to reread them. I absolutely in love with Tolkien, and I think he's a genius. He's a genius, and no one can compare to him. No work of other authors can compare to the work of Tolkien. And I'm so grateful that I grew up listening to my mom reading his books. The Chronicles of Narnia was also like a fairy tale for me, and when I grew older, there was a movie, but it's completely different from the book. I am the person who prefers books over movies, always. After all this time, always. The quote from Harry Potter: one more wizarding world, fantasy world I'm in love with. When I was a kid, I remember the time when first Harry Potter book was published. As a non-native English speaker, living in a completely different country, we were waiting for the books of Harry Potter for so long. It was like published with a delay, a huge delay in comparison to the other countries. And I remember how my mom met me after school, and we went to the bookstore investigating where we can find another book. And book after book after book, we were doing the same. And I remember going to the store and finding another book of Harry Potter, like the second one, the Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, or the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And I was so impressed. And every other book, before starting reading this new, I reread the previous ones, and only then I will go to the next one, which is fresh off the oven, hot off the press. And I was so impressed. And then I remember how movies of Harry Potter started being accessible for people, and we bought like VHS tapes with them. That was incredible time. Actually, here's the note. I love Harry Potter movies, maybe the same way I love books. And also, it's the same with Lord of the Rings, because I love music, I love the atmosphere, I love the image in these movies, I like the cast of actors. Yeah, the Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter movies are great, but I prefer books. Yeah, always prefer the books. I grew up with Cinderella stories and Hans Christian Andersen, The Mermaid. It's not the same like Disney movie, and it's a little bit creepy and like a horror story for kids, I think. It must be prohibited. I'm kidding. It's amazing. And I grew up on these stories and with national fairy tales of our country, with foreign fairy tales. I loved to read them. So after that, when I grew up and moved out from my parents' house, moved to another city and started to live on my own, I was 16, I can remember. I continue reading fiction books like fantasy. It's fantasy for me, you know? It's like a parallel universe. I found down the author, Dan Brown, and his Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, and later on Inferno, and this whole universe, this whole new world. This was interesting for me, and I kept rereading my favorites, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, but these types of books affected my life really, really hard in a good way. I always kept dreaming that our world could be better. And I was always hoping that, like, maybe there is something magical exists in our world in reality. You know, the kids' minds are so clear. When you're a kid, you have a clear vision of this world. You're dreaming, you're positive thinking, and you're happy. You're just happy because you live. You're happy your every day. And the older I get, the more I began to understand that our world can be cruel. People are not the same. I was thinking about them, and maybe there's not enough magic. And the thing which helped me to go through the life stages, like going through the university or maybe breakups with friends and building my whole life from scratch. Remember, I was 16 as a teenager / becoming a young adult. The only thing which helped me to go through this life is fantasy. Because fantasy is the thing which helped me to keep dreaming, keep hoping for the better world. And also this is kind of a magic pill when you're upset, when you want to hide anywhere, when you don't want to see anyone, when you're so tired of everything surrounding you. Fantasy books and books at all can help you to travel through the world, to travel to the magic world of Harry Potter, to visit Hogwarts, or to travel to the Middle Earth and see elves, to join the trip to the Mordor. I love it so much. That's how I grew up with fantasy books. And the last thing I read recently, actually, and thanks to YouTube and TikTok. I'm not watching TikTok. I'm not a fan of short videos, but I love YouTube. That's why I'm here, because I want to share my thoughts also with you. One of the bloggers which I am watching, she showed in one of her vlogs that she bought the ACOTAR book. And she was so impressed by it because she's not a reader at all. I started my own investigation. What is ACOTAR actually? What is that? Why everyone loves it? And I decided to give it a try because it's a fantasy world. There's fairies, men with wings, and a little bit of smut. That was the first time when I learned what smut is. But I don't agree with that. It's not smut. I think this is too much of the words for this specific book. I don't know. It's not smut. I bought the ACOTAR series. Are you going to be kidding me? Yeah. Sorry for the noises, guys, because it's too hot. It's plus 37, plus 35 degrees outside, and I cannot close the windows because my AC is not working properly and I don't want to catch a cold. So there will be noises from the nature and from the people outside. Yeah. Sweet melody. So where were we? My bestie gifted me a whole kit of ACOTAR books, a whole set, as a Kindle edition from Amazon. And I was so happy because I was wondering, what are the books like? I wanted to read this fantasy, but I waited to read them for almost a year. It's incredibly stupid. I don't know. I have a huge collection of books, and this is another topic. This is another topic for another episode. I will be happy to discuss it with you about our libraries, about our collections, how we read. Do we have a physical copies or do we have Kindle copies, and what do you like, what I prefer? If you're interested in this, please let me know in the comment section below. I will be happy to discuss it. But I'm a little bit nervous because this is the first episode and I want to talk about it so much that all the words in my mind are like mixed up with in different languages. Please understand me. That's the first try. Give me a try. 1 year after that, I actually started reading ACOTAR. And that was the time I actually ordered the Kindle, because I used to read on my iPad and I understood how my eyes are burning after reading from the screen. Because I'm working remotely and I work a lot with my laptop, I prefer not to use my phone so much because it's not healthy, too much screens in our lives nowadays. But I decided to buy a Kindle and I thought yeah, that's the best time to start finally reading ACOTAR series. And that was incredible. That was amazing, actually. So after I finished the 5th book, which blew my mind completely, I was so impressed that I bought a physical copy of ACOTAR because I wanted to work with this book and to make highlights and maybe heard about the technique of annotation. So I bought the series of ACOTAR, which is actually behind me on the shelf. And I'm so happy to see it on my shelf. I want to reread it, but now in a physical copy. Too many words about fantasy, but maybe now you can understand how I love it. Why I loved ACOTAR. This is another topic, I think. In this video, I want to describe how I switched from fantasy to detectives, which I never read. But I want to mention maybe 1 or 2 points, why ACOTAR and why I love it. So for me, this is a modern fantasy, but the lore, the whole universe of this world is so impressive. It's so huge that a lot of characters. I'm not a fan of the main character, I'd rather say, because finally, in the end of the 5th book, not in the end, in the beginning of the 5th book, but in the end of the whole ACOTAR set, I fell in love with the sister of main character. So there are lots of characters which you can fall in love, which you can compare to yourself and grew up mentally, with these characters. Honestly, I'm not kidding right now. These books made me cry, made me laugh, made me angry, happy, and all of it. That's mind-blowing. I don't know, if you have these books, if you ever read any book that made you cry and be happy and laugh like an idiot, let me know in the comments which book it is. Or it was. I've never experienced that before, especially in comparison. I love Lord of the Rings. I love Harry Potter books. Why ACOTAR made me cry and laugh at the same time? I'm so impressed by these books, and I decided that I want to read more fantasy. My Pinterest board is full of fantasy books and cozy books. I always choose the book by its cover. I know it might be silly, but I love book covers, and thanks to publishers who make them beautiful and stunning. And even as a Kindle owner, I want the books in a Kindle edition with beautiful covers because I can see the cover when I take my Kindle to read the next book or next chapter. After reading ACOTAR, I had a little pause, and then all of a sudden my friend, my second bestie, she suggested me to read detective stories. As I was always a huge fan of fantasy world, and she's also a fan of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, She was always a huge fan of detective stories. She grew up with Sherlock Holmes, with the books of Agatha Christie, and she really, really loved detective stories. And recently we started following some book bloggers, and there is a little trend which I mentioned, that a lot of girls in their 20s or almost 20s, like 19 years old, they read a lot of classic books by Russian authors and foreign authors. And also, not only classic, but a lot of books, detective stories and true crime. There's one girl who's a huge fan of true crime, but it's not for me. It's completely different from detectives, because true crime, I'm so emotional, I'm so vulnerable with my emotions. I think true crime is not for me. Life is cruel. Our world is not safe. And if I will be reading true crime, I'm sorry, I will be dead with my emotions. I don't know how I will survive these books. But detective stories, they are fiction in comparison to true crime, which is not fiction. And understanding that this all were true stories, no, thank you. Thank you, I don't want it. So she discovered one girl who recommended the detective books by Joël Dicker. I've never heard about this author, and sorry if I'm wrong, but I guess he's French. I can guess by his name. And we bought his books. We bought all his books. I know this is kind of silly, but he has a trilogy about a writer. That's why I was hooked, because I want to become a writer. I want to become an author. And this is also one of my experiences in life. I'm on this path right now, and I want to share it also on this channel. So I'm in the beginning, just in the beginning, on the 0 point, like at the start. And why I was so hooked about the books of Joël Dicker, because this trilogy is about Marcus Goldman, who is a writer and who struggles with his writing, and he helps with the investigation in one of the cities in America, in the state of Maine or New Hampshire. I don't remember for now. I'm this type of person who read the book, and the same day I can't remember maybe names or places, but I can remember the plot. The first book, Harry Quebert. This is the emotional story when this young author, young writer, helps to investigate the death of a 15-year-old girl, which was missing for many, many years. And this girl has a connection to his older friend and professor. And this is interesting. And through the whole book, you go with this Marcus Goldman investigating the whole process. You see different people, different stories. You learn about their lives, their cases, and how they are all connected. And through the whole book, you suspect one person, then another, then another, then another. And in the end of the book, when the investigation is over and the case is closed and you see the answer, you're like, wow, what I've just read. My mind is blowing, it drives me nuts. That are my emotions after reading this book. And that was so incredible that I thought like, yeah, if all detective stories are like this, I love it. I definitely love it and want to read more. So I read the trilogy by Joël Dicker. The second book is the Book of Baltimore's, but it's not a detective story at all. It's more like a biography about the same character, about Marcus Goldman. But the third book, The Case of Alaska Sanders, it's another detective story with a huge investigation, with a lot of suspicious people and objects. And also, like in the first book, you see the life of Marcus Goldman, who helps investigating the story with the officer, with the inspector, sorry. This is so interesting because through the whole book, again and again, you suspect one person, then another. You can't understand even what you're reading and who's the murderer and how this girl ended up like this. That is so interesting, and it's not typical. For me, it's not a typical detective. The only detective story I read, it was in the high school years, And this is the classic by Conan Doyle about Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And when I grew older and in my 20s, I met my husband, my future husband that time. He showed me the Sherlock Holmes series. And I fell in love with this, especially because there is a Benedict Cumberbatch. Who can not fall in love with him? Tell me. The Sherlock Holmes series with Benedict Cumberbatch are incredible. And this is the only story I know. And I know the differences between the original book and the series. It's okay. The series I love, and maybe the series I love more than a book, because the book is obviously old and it has different scenes, different vibe, different atmosphere. But the series about Sherlock Holmes are more modern, are more related to our timing. And that's why I love it more. It's so impressive. But that's all. That's it. I've never read the Agatha Christie stories, the Agatha Christie books, and I think I have to. I have to because it's classic, and shame on me. Let me know in the comments, did you read any detective stories, or do you like it or not? And maybe who is your favorite author, because I love to know more. I love to learn about new authors, their books, and this is a whole incredible new world to me, new plot twist. Hey, I was a fantasy lover and now I love detectives and nobody can stop me because I cannot continue reading any fantasy book now. I just want to read more detectives. Damn, how I ended up like this. Oh my God. Long story short, I finished Trilogy by Joel Dicker. And then we found out another book, which completely blew my mind. I don't know how to express my feelings here, but actually this book has different titles in my native language, which I read it, and the original. So the original name, if I'm correct, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Strangely and weirdly, in my native language, it's not 7.5 deaths, it's just 7. But I think the 7.5 deaths, it's more correct. If you never heard about it, I will try to leave a link in the description below for the Goodreads or maybe Amazon so you can read the description. This is a completely different story. So this is a detective story, but it's more like a mysterious novel, and the novel with a riddle. I will not give you any spoilers. I love spoilers, but I guess you might not. So the story is about a man who wakes up every time in a different body, and he has the whole day to help with the investigation and to investigate the death of Evelyn Hardcastle. So he has 8 attempts in 8 bodies. In the end of the book, you need to know who will kill the Evelyn Hardcastle, how she's dying, and what's actually going on. But you know, the whole story, it's not the same like with Joel Dicker's books, but the whole story made me crazy while I was reading, because the beginning of this book was like slow paced and a little bit boring at some point, but I gave it a try. It was worth it. It was worth it because story is not typical at all. You get immersed in this world more and more with each chapter, and you get to know each character. I don't know how to say it correctly without spoilers. That's why it's important to see the story from different angles when he wakes up in different bodies, because you can see different points of view. You can hear different dialogues of people and like complete the riddle. Most important thing in this is when you finish the book, when I finished the book, it was so mind-blowing that I was in shock for several minutes. And then I recorded a voicemail to my friend who suggested me to read this amazing book. And I was in total shock, not only about the plot twist, about the whole investigation process, about the riddles. I definitely can recommend this book to you. It seems mystical, but it's not. But at some point, yes. And the ending of the story, if you watched the Black Mirror series, if you're familiar with it, there is one episode, my husband reminded me, the idea was the same. The idea from the book ending. Now I cannot stop myself of reading detective stories. And I don't know Is it too little drama in our lives? Why I love this so much? But I understood one thing. If fantasy books give me an opportunity to travel through the worlds, to live in forests and different places, to meet elves and trolls and wizards and make magic and imagine like I'm a little mermaid or anyone else, these detective stories give me drama, which I don't want in my real life. There's too much drama outside, and I want you to take care of yourself. But these detective stories add a little bit of spice. And that's why reading fantasy can be dramatic also. And maybe if you combine the fantasy with detectives, like maybe inside the fantasy book, there will be like an investigation of something. This is incredible. This is interesting. I'm hooked. Maybe that's why, maybe because of drama, I fell in love with detective stories and I want to read more. I want to know Agatha Christie. I want to know her story. I want to read her books. I want to finish all the books by Joel Dicker. I think he's a genius. He wrote amazing books and his writings are, I don't know how to express my emotions and express my feelings in that case. But you know, when you read the book and you see the style in which it was written, you see the words, how they combined into the sentences. So this way, Joel Dicker did a great job, a great job. As a transition from detectives back to fantasy, I just finished the classic book. It's Dracula by Bram Stoker. And shame on me, that was the first time in my 30 plus years when I read it. I know the story of Dracula, I know the history of a real man, why he was called Dracula, and etc. But I never read this book. And I was impressed because it's classic, it's written in a different way, it's a little bit strange. It's not like fantasy, ACOTAR or Lord of the Rings. No, it's a gothic story. But for that time, in that era, it was different. It was a horror story. For us, we so get used to these boom, 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 drama everywhere, fast-pacing stories, I don't know. We so get used to these movies and stories that Bram Stoker's Dracula seems a little bit too calm, maybe too boring for someone, but that's an incredible book and I definitely recommend you to read it. And one of my favorites I'm currently reading is The Phantom of the Opera. It's mystical, it's gothic. For me, it's a fantasy, but also with an investigation, obviously, because people there investigate who is the damned Phantom of the Opera. And if you didn't read it, definitely recommend you to start because it's more engaging and interesting than the Dracula. And also, there is a good movie on the Phantom of the Opera, and I used to see the musical on it. So, if you're a fan of fantasy and if you love detectives, I think you can start with the Phantom of the Opera because it's old, it's classics, and there is an investigation. But it's also mystical. I think I said enough for today, and this episode might be quite long. Let me know in the comments if you love these long episodes. I will do more because I love to speak, and I completely forgot how to do it in front of camera. I was a little bit nervous today. Let me know, please, in the comments how you're feeling about this topic. Do you love reading at all? I guess you are because you clicked on this video about books, about genres. Let me know what is your favorite genre. Maybe it's fantasy, maybe it's gothic, maybe it's true crime. It was fun to make this first episode. It's raw, it's authentic, it's supernatural, and it's just me. And if you have any ideas for the future episodes, let me know. Also, I love chatting and I want to learn more about my viewers, my subscribers. Thank you so much if you stayed till the end of the video. It made me so happy. Hope to see you in another video, and bye.